off this A final of the men's youth Cox 4.
So NorCal, having won their semifinal, comes out and wins the A final. Belmont Hill, having placed 5th last year, has certainly improved upon that trajectory upward.
Now on the field, we have the women's youth Cox 4 A final underway. Over in lane 0, we have Nobles, lane 1, Greenwich, lane 2, Blair, lane 3, Detroit, lane 4, St. Andrew, lane 5, NorCal, lane 6, Windsor, and lane 7, Pocock.
In this race, we have some more history. Have programs that like to row these Cox 4s who show up here year after year. You train in them oftentimes at various levels. You do your seat racing in 4s for bigger boats. Sometimes you combine your pairs into these boats, whether you break it down otherwise. But all the way across the field, we have at least 4 crews that were in this A final last year of the 6 crews that made the A final. We have in lane 2, we have Blair, who placed 2nd in this event last year. They came in 2nd in their semifinal, which put them in that particular lane. Detroit, who won their semifinal, placed 4th in this event last year. St. Andrew, SA, who we know also won their semifinal. Interesting race out of that boat from St. Andrew. That dark hull placed 3rd in this event last year. And Windsor, who placed 3rd in their semifinal, was the winner of this event last year. So lots of history on the course. SA being one of those fastest movers through the semifinals. Keep an eye for a full 2,000-meter piece out of that crew.
Definitely, and as we approach the 750 meters into this race, it does look like Detroit and that lighter shell out of lane 3 is out ahead. Hard to see the progress of St. Andrew, but they are moving. Again, these dark shells are difficult to spot, very sneaky. Windsor also in that dark shell in lane 6, moving on SA, both SA and Windsor moving on Detroit. They are pushing the field.
And along with them pushing the field, speaking of the darker color hull, maybe it's something in the color. Maybe it's the personality, the fun that it elicits. Maybe it's something that it's different. Maybe it's just all of the training that goes into it. And they just happen to have colorful hulls. Greenwich also in there, looking to be a part of what SA and Windsor are doing in terms of the pressure that they want to put on Detroit. Detroit, of course, they're in those blue unisuits with the white blades and the white hulls as they are about to cross the 1,000. You can see just how close it is with barely half of the race unwound already. You can see Windsor in the red hull, SA in the black hull, Greenwich in that blue hull on the far side. Detroit still out in front, but those are your crews that are on the move right now. We are into the third 500 of this race. No timeouts, no halftime. Push the button. Don't even think about it. It's just another stroke. Here we go. It's Greenwich on the move.
Greenwich is on the move. So again, Detroit still out in front. I dare say St. Andrew probably a half a deck, so a half of the non-occupied part of the boat. So the bow ball to the coxswain, they've got about half of that distance ahead of the boat across of Greenwich. So it is Detroit and then St. Andrew. Greenwich probably tied there with Windsor. Hard to tell, but they are moving. That boat that is next to the Greenwich crew, the Blair crew, holding with them, sort of trying to edge their bow ball into that fight.
It looks like a Blair also wants to get back into that because Greenwich did make a move through that 1,000 over that for the last 250 meters or so. We have 250 meters to go, and it looks as though Greenwich is ahead of SA right now by maybe a nose. Those two are going back and forth, bow ball to bow ball, even though they are 2 lanes away from one another. Detroit out in front by a length over those 2 crews. Those are your second place crews, but right now my perception is seeing that Blair is now among the top 4, just barely maybe a nose or above. They're trading bow balls with Windsor over on the far side. So you have Detroit out in front, Greenwich and SA in the darker hulls battling it out for that second and third. And right now, Blair and Windsor battling it out also. Those are your top 5 at the moment. And just as I say that, NorCal is looking to dig in and find a little bit more as well. They are just about 3/4 of a length off of Windsor. Their bow and stern decks are fully overlapped, so their bow ball is just about on the stroke seat of that Windsor crew. So they are all in contact with less than 500 meters to go. Sprinting USRowing is about to happen here, folks. It is anyone's race at this point. Detroit is out front, but they haven't continued to move. They're just kind of sitting there. Greenwich may have taken one more foot over SA.
And that is something that happens as you cross through the 500. When people start to turn on the sprint, those who have the lead in front, that's not for certain until you cross the finish line, because the field is pushing each other. That fight, that dog fight for bow ball across between the Greenwich and SA crews is pushing Detroit. It is not making it easy for them.
And NorCal looking to overtake Windsor. They may just do it. They are still about a foot off of Windsor. It might be barely neck and neck. Greenwich just sitting on SA. SA not letting it go. Detroit into the sprint portion of the race. The question is, who's going to sprint? Blair looks to be the crew that is sprinting first. They've been slightly imperceptibly on the move so far. They're a half of a length down from Greenwich. They're a half of a length into Greenwich. Greenwich on the move now, but still SA is there, just not letting it up. They are just sitting there. SA looks like they have more gears if they choose to use them. 3 boats nearly across behind our early and still leaders of Detroit. Blair wants to sprint and get in there, but they are still just behind SA and Greenwich. Greenwich still made that decision through the middle 1,000, but it's just barely a few inches. It looks like SA is sprinting, and they may have taken an inch. They may have taken an inch on Greenwich. It is going to come down to a photo finish there. It's also going to be very tight between Windsor, NorCal, and Blair across. This is a matter of
inches.
Beeps.
Beeps.
I was looking for those horns. Just let them be.
Oh.
They didn't even use them. What do we hear? Just a few for 5 boats. Less than 5 horns for, 6 boats. Less than 5 horns for 6 boats.